The Iran-U.S. nuclear negotiations have a long and complex history. Distrust has marked this relationship for decades. The central issue is Iran's nuclear program. The West, particularly the United States, fears Iran might develop nuclear weapons. Iran insists its program is purely for peaceful energy purposes. This fundamental disagreement has led to numerous rounds of talks. Sanctions have been imposed on Iran. Diplomatic efforts have seen periods of hope and deep frustration. The original nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action or JCPOA, was signed in 2015. It aimed to limit Iran's nuclear activities. In return, international sanctions against Iran were lifted. However, the United States unilaterally withdrew from this agreement in 2018. This withdrawal led to the reimposition of harsh U.S. sanctions. Iran, in response, gradually began to increase its nuclear activities beyond the JCPOA's limits. This escalation brought renewed urgency to diplomatic efforts. The current negotiations seek to find a new path forward, or perhaps revive old understandings. The international community remains deeply divided on how to approach Iran. Some nations advocate for strict measures and continued pressure. Others argue for diplomacy and engagement. The current global landscape, with its shifting alliances and new conflicts, further complicates these negotiations. The goal is to ensure Iran's nuclear program remains peaceful. The latest U.S. proposal attempts to break the diplomatic deadlock. It was presented in early 2025. Washington suggests a framework for limited uranium enrichment by Iran. Uranium enrichment can produce fuel for nuclear power plants or material for nuclear weapons. Any agreement on enrichment levels is critical. Iran would need to accept stringent international oversight by the IAEA. This includes declared and potentially undeclared sites. The proposal likely includes provisions for a gradual lifting of some U.S. sanctions. Washington believes these measures are necessary to rebuild trust and ensure long-term stability. Iran's response to the U.S. proposal was swift and clear. Tehran rejected the American offer. Iranian officials stated that the proposal did not meet their country's core demands. A primary reason for this rejection is Iran's emphasis on national sovereignty. Iran views its nuclear program as a sovereign right. It believes it should be able to develop peaceful nuclear technology without external impositions. This perspective is deeply ingrained in Iran's national identity and political discourse. Furthermore, Iran highlights its goal of self-reliance. Decades of international sanctions have pushed Iran to develop its domestic capabilities. This includes its nuclear technology. Iranian leaders argue that they cannot depend on foreign powers for their energy needs or technological advancement. The U.S. proposal, with its strict limits and intrusive oversight, is seen by some in Tehran as an attempt to undermine this hard-won self-sufficiency. Iran also points to past experiences. The U.S. withdrawal from the 2015 JCPOA significantly damaged trust. Iranian officials question the reliability of any new agreement with Washington. They seek guarantees that the U.S. will not unilaterally abandon a future deal. The current proposal, in their view, does not offer sufficient assurances. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, plays a crucial role in the Iran nuclear issue. It is the United Nations nuclear watchdog. Its mandate is to verify that nuclear materials and technologies are used for peaceful purposes. The IAEA has been monitoring Iran's nuclear program for years. Its inspectors conduct regular visits to Iranian nuclear sites. They install cameras and seals. They also collect samples for analysis. The agency's reports are vital for informing the international community about Iran's activities. Regarding the recent U.S. proposal, the IAEA's position is technical and impartial. The agency does not take political sides in the negotiations. However, it emphasizes the importance of robust verification measures. For any agreement to be credible, the IAEA must have the necessary access and tools. This includes access to all relevant sites, information, and personnel. The agency has repeatedly stated its readiness to implement any verification regime agreed upon by the parties involved. Section 5, European Dilemmas: Navigating Diplomacy Amidst Transatlantic Tensions. European diplomats find themselves in a challenging position. The E3, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom were key architects of the original JCPOA. They have consistently advocated for a diplomatic solution to the Iran nuclear issue. They were deeply disappointed by the U.S. withdrawal in 2018. This move not only jeopardized the deal but also created transatlantic tensions. European nations have since tried to preserve the JCPOA. They have also worked to bring both Iran and the U.S. back to the negotiating table. The recent U.S. proposal has elicited mixed reactions in European capitals. On one hand, they welcome any serious attempt by Washington to re-engage diplomatically. They see it as a potential opening. They hope it could lead to a breakthrough. On the other hand, they are also aware of Iran's strong objections. European diplomats understand Tehran's concerns about sovereignty and the reliability of U.S. commitments. They are trying to bridge the gap between the U.S. position and Iranian demands. This requires delicate diplomacy. European nations have significant economic and security interests at stake. A nuclear-armed Iran would destabilize the Middle East. It would also pose a direct threat to European security. An uncontrolled escalation of tensions could lead to conflict. This would have severe consequences for the region and beyond. Therefore, European diplomats are working tirelessly behind the scenes. Section 6. Regional fault lines, Israel's deep-seated security concerns. Israel views Iran's nuclear program as an existential threat. This perspective shapes its entire approach to the issue. Israeli leaders have consistently warned about the dangers of a nuclear-armed Iran. They believe that Iran's regional ambitions, coupled with its nuclear capabilities, would pose an unacceptable risk. Israel has a policy of preventing its adversaries from acquiring nuclear weapons. This policy has at times included preemptive actions. The rhetoric from Israeli officials is often strong and uncompromising. Regarding the U.S. proposal for limited enrichment, Israel is likely to be highly skeptical. Israeli officials generally advocate for a zero enrichment policy for Iran. They believe that any level of enrichment capability would allow Iran to quickly develop nuclear weapons if it chose to do so. Therefore, a proposal that permits Iran to continue enriching uranium, even under strict limits, would probably be seen as insufficient from an Israeli security standpoint. Israel would prefer a deal that completely dismantles Iran's enrichment infrastructure. Israel has maintained its right to act independently to protect its security interests. This includes the option of military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. While such action would be highly risky and controversial, Israeli leaders have not ruled it out. This stance adds another layer of complexity to the diplomatic efforts. Section 7. America's Balancing Act Strategy, Alliances and the Iranian Question. The United States faces a complex balancing act in its Iran policy. Preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons is a long-standing U.S. goal, shared by administrations of both political parties. A nuclear Iran would alter the strategic landscape of the Middle East, threatening U.S. allies and interests, undermining the global non-proliferation regime. The U.S. must manage its alliances. Israel is a key U.S. ally. Its security concerns are a major consideration. The U.S. also has important partnerships with Gulf Arab states. Any U.S. approach to Iran must consider allied perspectives. Section 8. The search for common ground mediation efforts and diplomatic channels. Given the direct distrust between Tehran and Washington, mediation efforts are crucial. Several countries and international bodies have tried to act as intermediaries. Oman, for example, has a history of facilitating talks between Iran and the U.S. Qatari officials, have also played a role in conveying messages. European Union diplomats, particularly the EU's foreign policy chief, often serve as coordinators for the broader P5+1, China, France, Germany, Russia, UK, US, and Iran talks. These mediators work to create a conducive atmosphere for dialogue. The goal of these mediation efforts is to find common ground. Mediators try to understand the core interests and red lines of each side. They explore potential compromises. They help to de-escalate tensions when rhetoric becomes heated. Sometimes they host indirect talks. In such talks, diplomats from Iran and the US might be in the same city, or even the same building. However, they do not meet face-to-face. Instead, intermediaries shuttle between them, conveying proposals and responses. This can be a slow and painstaking process. Challenges to mediation are numerous. The deep-seated animosity means that even small gestures can be misinterpreted. Hardliners on both sides may oppose any concessions. Section 9. An uncertain horizon. Future prospects for nuclear dialogue and stability. The future prospects for Iran-U.S. nuclear negotiations remain highly uncertain as of June 2025. Iran's rejection of the latest U.S. proposal highlights significant gaps. Tehran's insistence on sovereignty and full sanctions relief clashes with Washington's demands. Bridging this divide will require immense political will and diplomatic creativity. The path forward is unlikely to be smooth or straightforward. Much depends on the willingness of both sides to make difficult compromises. One possibility is a prolonged stalemate. Iran could continue to advance its nuclear program. The U.S. could maintain or even increase sanctions. This would heighten regional tensions and increase the risk of conflict.